Imagine you just spent $250,000 on a piece of equipment. You trusted the brand, you trusted the dealer, and nobody told you the machine was already broken before it left the factory. This is the story of how one of the biggest names in agriculture sold thousands of defective balers across the world and then tried to pretend it never happened. And what farmers discovered? It's way worse than a bad baler. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at the entire farm equipment industry differently. Let's rewind. New Holland has been a trusted name in farming for over a century. They're not some fly-by-night operation. We're talking about a company under the CNH industrial umbrella, the same corporate giant that owns Case IH, Iveco, and a portfolio worth tens of billions of dollars. When a farmer walks into a New Holland dealership, they're not buying from a startup, they're buying legacy, they're buying reliability, or at least, that's the pitch. In the early 2010s, New Holland rolled out an updated lineup of large square balers and round balers that were supposed to be the gold standard. Faster, smarter, more efficient. The kind of machines that make a hay operation actually profitable. Farmers across North America, Europe, and Australia lined up. These weren't cheap impulse buys. We're talking machines priced anywhere from $80,000 to well over $250,000 depending on the model and configuration. For many small and mid-sized operations, that's not just a purchase. That's a bet the farm decision. And here's the thing about farming most people don't understand. Timing is everything. You've got a window to cut hay, a window to bale it, and if your equipment fails during that window, you don't just lose time. You lose the crop. You lose income. Sometimes you lose the whole season. So when farmers started noticing problems with their brand new New Holland balers, problems that shouldn't exist on machines that expensive, the clock was already ticking. But what they didn't know yet was just how deep this rabbit hole went. It started with the knotters. Now, if you're not a farmer, let me explain why this matters. The knotter is the heart of a square baler. It's the mechanism that ties the twine around each bale. If the knotter fails, you don't get bales. You get a mess. You get wasted hay scattered across a field. You get a $200,000 machine that's basically a very expensive lawn ornament. Farmers started reporting knotter failures on brand new machines. Not after 5 seasons of hard use, not after pushing the equipment beyond its limits. On day 1, first field, first cut. And it wasn't just one farmer. Forum posts started appearing on sites like Hay Talk, Tractor by Net, and the Combine Forum. Farmers from Kansas to Kentucky to Canada, all describing the same nightmare. Knotters misfiring, twine breaking, bales falling apart in the field. But here's where it gets interesting, and honestly, this is the part that makes my blood boil. When these farmers called their dealers, they were told the same thing over and over again. It's operator error. Let that sink in. Guys who've been baling hay for 30 years, guys whose fathers and grandfathers baled hay, were being told they were the problem. Not the machine, not the engineering, not the parts that were clearly defective straight out of the box. You're holding the twine wrong, you're feeding the hay wrong. You need to adjust this, you need to recalibrate that. One farmer in Oklahoma, let's call him Dale, told me he brought his baler back to the dealer 7 times in a single season. 7. Each time they fixed it. Each time it broke again before he made it through the next field. He lost 40% of his hay crop that year. 40%. On a machine that was still under warranty. And Dale wasn't alone. Not even close. But the real question, the one that kept nagging at farmers across the country, was this. If it's really operator error, why are thousands of operators suddenly making the same mistake, unless it's not operator error at all? Here's where the story takes a turn that New Holland probably hoped would never become public. As more and more farmers came forward, a pattern emerged. And it wasn't just knotters. The problems were systemic. Pickup mechanisms that jammed constantly, plunger timing issues that caused uneven bale density, hydraulic failures that left machines dead in the field, electrical gremlins in the monitoring systems that gave false readings, or no readings at all. One farmer reported that his baler's fire suppression system activated randomly in the middle of a dry field, with no fire, just chaos. Now, you might be thinking, okay, every manufacturer has some lemons. That's what warranties are for. And you'd be right, except for one massive, jaw-dropping detail. Multiple farmers reported that when they demanded warranty repairs, their dealers told them the parts needed to fix the machine weren't available. New Holland hadn't manufactured enough replacement components. So farmers were left sitting on broken equipment they were still making payments on, waiting weeks or even months for parts that should have been in stock from day one. Think about that timeline. It's June, hay is ready, your baler breaks, the dealer says the part won't arrive until August. By August, your hay has been rained on 4 times, it's ruined. Your livestock feed plan for the winter is destroyed. You're now buying hay from someone else at premium prices, all because a multi-billion-dollar corporation couldn't or wouldn't stock the parts for a machine they knew was defective. And I said "knew" for a reason, because here's the bombshell that farmers started uncovering when they dug deeper. Internal service bulletins. These are documents that manufacturers send to their dealer networks, essentially memos that say, hey, we know about this problem, here's how to fix it. But here's the catch. Service bulletins are not the same as a recall. A recall is public. A recall means the manufacturer has to notify every owner. A recall means accountability. A service bulletin? That's a whisper. It's a quiet heads up to the dealer. And the dealer has zero obligation to contact the farmer who bought the machine. So what was happening? New Holland was identifying defects, sending service bulletins to dealerships, and then, this is the key, not telling the farmers who owned the affected machines. Farmers were paying for repairs out of pocket on problems the manufacturer already knew about. They were being charged for shop time and parts to fix issues that should have been covered, issues that New Holland had internally acknowledged but never publicly disclosed. The estimated value of these uncommunicated defects, unreimbursed repairs, lost crops, and consequential damages across the affected model years. Conservative estimates from agricultural advocacy groups put it north of $200 million. $200 million. And most of those farmers never saw a dime. Now, you'd think a scandal this big would make national news. You'd think consumer protection agencies would be breaking down doors. You'd think there'd be congressional hearings. But here's the dirty secret of the agricultural equipment industry, and honestly, this might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. Farmers are the most underserved consumer group in America. When your Toyota has a defective airbag, NHTSA forces a recall. It makes the news, lawyers line up, there's accountability. But when a $250,000 baler destroys a farmer's entire season, there's no equivalent agency with real teeth. Agricultural equipment exists in a regulatory gray zone where the manufacturer holds almost all the power. And the manufacturers know it. New Holland's response to mounting complaints was a masterclass in corporate deflection. They pointed to warranty terms, they pointed to maintenance requirements, they quietly extended warranties on certain components for certain serial numbers, but only if the farmer specifically asked. And even then, the process was so convoluted that many farmers gave up. One farmer in Nebraska described calling New Holland's corporate customer service line and being on hold for over 3 hours. When he finally got through, the representative told him his complaint had been noted and that someone would follow up. Nobody followed up. 6 months later, he called again. There was no record of his previous call. This is a pattern that consumer advocacy researchers call strategic friction. The practice of making the complaint process so painful, so time-consuming, and so demoralizing that most people simply stop trying. And in farming communities, where people are already working 14-hour days during harvest season, the friction works exactly as intended. But the silence wasn't complete. Because farmers talk at the feed store, at the co-op, at the auction barn, and what started as isolated grumbling turned into something the company didn't expect: organized resistance. Farming forums became war rooms. Farmers started sharing serial numbers, comparing service bulletins, documenting failures with timestamps and photographs. Some hired independent mechanics to inspect their machines and produce written reports contradicting the dealer's operator error diagnosis. And a handful, a brave, stubborn handful, went to lawyers. Let me tell you about what happened when farmers actually tried to fight back, because this is where the story gets both infuriating and inspiring at the same time. Several class action and individual lawsuits were filed against CNH Industrial, New Holland's parent company, alleging breach of warranty, fraud by omission, and violations of consumer protection statutes. The claims were straightforward. The company sold defective products, knew they were defective, failed to notify owners, and then blamed the owners for the defects. Open and shut, right? Not even close. CNH Industrial has some of the most expensive corporate lawyers on the planet. Their legal strategy was elegant in its cruelty: delay, deny, and drown in paperwork. Discovery requests that took months to process, motions to dismiss filed on technical grounds, forced arbitration clauses buried in the fine print of purchase agreements that many farmers didn't even know they'd signed. Here's a fun fact that will make you want to throw your phone across the room. Many modern farm equipment purchase agreements include mandatory arbitration clauses that strip the buyer of their right to a jury trial. So even if a farmer has an airtight case, they can't take it to a courtroom. They're funneled into a private arbitration process that statistically favors the corporation. And the kicker? Some of those arbitration clauses also include class action waivers, meaning farmers can't even band together. Each one has to fight alone. A single farmer against a $30 billion multinational corporation. David versus Goliath doesn't even begin to cover it, but some farmers fought anyway. And some of them won. Individual settlements, always with confidentiality agreements attached, of course, started trickling out. Replacement machines, partial refunds, extended warranties, nothing earth-shattering, nothing that would make the evening news. Just enough to make the problem go away, one farmer at a time, without ever setting a public precedent. Meanwhile, the underlying defects were never formally recalled. Let me say that again for the people in the back. The machines were never formally recalled. There is no NHTSA-style database entry. There is no public acknowledgement from New Holland saying, "We made a mistake and here's what we're doing about it." There's just a trail of service bulletins, quiet settlements, and thousands of farmers who learned the hard way that brand loyalty is a one-way street. Now, I want to zoom out for a second, because this isn't just a New Holland problem, this is an industry problem. The farm equipment market is dominated by a handful of massive corporations: Deere & Company, CNH Industrial, AGCO, and a few others. Together, they control the vast majority of the market. And in recent years, the relationship between these companies and the farmers who depend on them has been deteriorating at an alarming rate. Right to repair battles, proprietary software locks that prevent farmers from fixing their own equipment, dealer networks that prioritize volume over service, equipment prices that have outpaced farm income growth by a factor of 3 over the last 2 decades. And now add to that list silent recalls, known defects that never get formally disclosed, service bulletins that exist in a shadow system between manufacturer and dealer, invisible to the person who actually owns the machine and bears the financial risk. The New Holland baler situation is a case study, but it's not an isolated incident. Farmers across all brands have reported similar experiences: the quiet bulletin, the deflected blame, the strategic friction designed to exhaust the complainant into silence. And the financial toll isn't abstract. The USDA reports that farm debt in America has been climbing steadily, hitting record levels in recent years. Equipment costs are one of the primary drivers. When a farmer takes on a $250,000 loan for a baler that fails in its first season, the cascading financial damage can take a decade to recover from, if recovery is even possible. Some don't recover, some lose the farm, and that's not hyperbole. That's the reality of what happens when a corporation decides that acknowledging a defect is more expensive than ignoring it. So what do you do if you're a farmer who's been burned? Or if you're about to make a major equipment purchase and you want to protect yourself? First, and I cannot stress this enough, document everything. Every failure, every dealer visit, every phone call, dates, times, names, reference numbers. Take photos, take video, get independent inspections in writing. In the event of a legal dispute, contemporaneous documentation is worth more than gold. Second, check for service bulletins yourself. Websites and farming forums often compile these bulletins that dealers won't volunteer. If a bulletin exists for your machine, you have leverage, even if the manufacturer never contacted you directly. Third, know your rights regarding warranty claims. In many jurisdictions, implied warranties and consumer protection statutes provide protections beyond what's written in the purchase agreement. A good agricultural attorney can tell you whether that forced arbitration clause is actually enforceable in your state. Fourth, get loud. Join farming advocacy groups, post on forums, share your experience. The single most powerful thing that happened in the New Holland baler situation was farmers talking to each other. Isolation is the corporation's best friend. Community is the farmer's best weapon. And fifth, consider the alternatives. The used equipment market, independent dealers, and smaller manufacturers exist for a reason. Sometimes the best defense against corporate indifference is simply refusing to give them your money. Here's the thing that sticks with me about this whole story. Farming is hard. It's always been hard. Farmers deal with weather, markets, regulations, and 1,000 variables they can't control. The one thing they should be able to control, the one thing they should be able to trust, is that when they write a check for $250,000, the machine works. And when it doesn't, the company that sold it to them should stand behind it, publicly, without games, without bulletins hidden in a dealer's filing cabinet, without legal teams designed to grind regular people into dust. $200 million in damages, thousands of affected farmers, and no recall, no press conference, no accountability. Just silence and the sound of a baler sitting broken in a field while the hay rots. If this story resonated with you, whether you're a farmer who's lived it or someone who just believes that people deserve better from the companies they trust, drop a comment below, share your experience. Let's make sure these stories don't stay buried in forum threads and sealed settlement agreements. And if you learned something today, consider sharing this video with someone in the farming community. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is make sure people know they're not alone. I'll see you in the next one.